Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
And you are officially tuned in to the GG Dispatch. Each week on Tuesday, bright and early, we consolidate the week's biggest headlines in gaming news. Whether you're listening in on your commute, during your workout, or you just have us on in the background, we want to thank you for listening in. And speaking of thanks, another thank you to the kind folks at Audio Technica for providing the microphones that both Alan and I are using, the AT2020 USB-X. Whether you're just starting out on your content creator journey or you're a seasoned pro, Audio Technica has the products for you. All right, another week of some pretty interesting news. I'm looking forward to digging into some of these stories here. But before we get into that, wanted to do a quick update on GTA 5 progress.
Yeah, let's go, Jeremy.
Okay. So I did 5 mission, like really 4 missions, and then a therapy session. And I did my first heist. I did the jewelry heist, and yeah. So I've just that's what I spent the last part of my game time this last week doing is just getting to spend a bit more time with Michael. Most of the missions were on the Michael side. The one that I did with Franklin was the long stretch. With when you're like having the shootout with the gangbangers in the building and stuff, and Lamar and Stretch.
Of course, Lamar it's always interesting when you're hanging out with Lamar.
Always a fun time. The therapy session was interesting. I always like those mechanics that utilize your gameplay to influence the scene, right? And so in this therapy session with the Dr. Friedlander, if you had been, if you did any prostitutes or any booty calls, like, you would talk about that and he would like kind of chastise you for it. If you've been, extra violent or like punching and shooting people randomly, like you talk about the violent urges that you had. But I was mostly a good boy. So, I just drove recklessly and stole some cars. And so, that was sort of the crux of the conversation there. But I thought that was really cool that it was kind of incorporating that gameplay.
I actually had a very different experience. He was like, Michael was kind of like basically talking of like, man, like, am I the, in one of the missions he talked about, I'm the good guy, in all these stories. And he kind of continues that with the therapist. And the therapist is kind of like, it sounds to me like you're kind of falling into these old habits that are destructive for you. And he's like, I don't know, me. Yeah, I mean, like I'm reaching a real breakthrough here, Doc. I've found the real me now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is who I am. I just know who I am. And then the conversation of whether, how they talked about before, if he's a sociopath or a psychopath and like all of their stuff. So
yeah, and the thing too is like you kind of see that doctor's kind of on his level, so to speak, of like he knows what he's doing is like criminal, and like he's serving as a therapist for a criminal, but he doesn't necessarily like tell him, oh, you should stop that. Right, he just kind of like lets him vent and quickly hurries him out because he's like, all right, I got my whatever X amount of dollars I charge for 30 minutes. I'll see you on the next one. I'm done hearing about your criminality.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I really like the character, like the mechanic of the therapy sessions in general. It's pretty cool. And then had fun with the long stretch, and then of course getting the heist set up. Meeting Lester, super cool.
Lester's wild, bro.
Yeah, archetypical kind of nerd with that very dark revenge streak. Like when you do the mission for Jay Norris, when you bug the phone, I didn't know what I was expecting when that when that mission happened, and it's like you're watching TV and it's like, okay, like when you're watching TV and he takes the phone out, then you call him, right? That was the craziest, that was the coolest like scene, like just how interactive it was and like just how engaging it was like, and so he's like, oh, I'm getting a call, and then you answer, and then like it blows up next to his head, it like takes him out. I was like, wow, like I literally felt very immersed, like at
What
the
I love
result of
though,
my action and the result of that mission. It was awesome.
what I love though, particularly, is that it makes you go through all the steps. It makes you start by going to like that clothes store. You got to
Uh-huh.
pick out, your outfit to fit in. Like it's very deliberate. Like you're doing this.
Right,
You're
right.
being that dude. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And so that's part of what I really enjoy about that
yeah.
particular mission, and also like the fact that in this world it's called Life Invader.
Uh-huh.
The application, and like that feels very apt for what we have these
Yeah,
days.
I mean the press conference was very on the nose. Like it was very ham-fisted. Like we have 1 billion users, private data, and we're aggregating it, and we're like using all this stuff, and we're ready for the future. Like all those things. So definitely picked up on that.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
tech companies will today will be like, oh, we're safeguarding, we don't do any of that. Like in this game world, like no, yeah, we have your data.
yeah,
Like it's just completely open and upfront about it.
yeah, exactly. More transparent, which was good. And then yeah, so going from that into the high setup, and then of course bringing Franklin, and it is cool to kind of see Michael and Franklin's interpersonal dynamics kind of growing and evolving. As Michael's like, hey, like I want to bring this kid in, like when he's talking to Lester and like vouching for Franklin. Um,
Yeah.
and it's, I mean, you get that you get a better look. I mean, really since the beginning of the game, right? But like that Michael as the orchestrator, the conductor, right? Like you see him as like, oh, okay, yeah, like he really knows what he's doing. um and so you get to have a bit more of that experience and that understanding, which is a lot of, which is pretty cool. Like you feel more like a badass as Michael after that scene where you're like, yeah, like I just ran this heist and I knew what was going down, and I knew how to do it the right way.
Yeah, and,
So
and the game like makes you choose your crew, and you
right,
make decisions of like, oh, do I take someone who's more experienced and better, or do I take someone who's less experienced but I'm gonna get a bigger cut of the haul?
right,
And I
right.
was wondering, like, did you end up taking like everyone who was at the highest, everyone at the lowest? How did you tackle that particular section?
Yeah, so I didn't do I picked mostly people who were higher ranked, except for the gunmen. In this instance, because they explicitly called out like we probably won't need a gunman because we're going to put everybody to sleep because I took the quiet route, um, like the smart route, right? And so I picked the lower experienced gunman, but everybody else was fairly high. And then I realized after the fact that I could have picked lower performers because they're going to gain experience like starting with that mission on, but their cut remains the same. So
Yeah,
i
yeah,
could
that's an
i could
interesting
have
dynamic on that
yeah,
first one.
yeah. So I could have picked somebody who had a lower cut, and then even still by the next mission they would have had more of that experience, etc. So I mean, I'm not losing sleep over it. Like I'm not necessarily like going to be playing the game in the way that I want to have like millions and millions of dollars like I know people like to and
Yeah,
want
it's
to.
not as consequential as like it makes you feel it at the beginning.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
me, I ended up going the quiet route as well. I chose sort of like the most experienced like driver because I didn't want like the driver messing up or trying to get away. I
Right.
chose kind of the mid level gunman, and then I chose the lowest hacker because again, the game being awesome is like, yo, you got a call from that IT dude who you were helping out when you went to the Life Invader offices for that earlier mission, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Yo, I lost my job. Like, hook me up." And he's also takes like a ridiculously low cut too. So, I
Yeah.
like weirdly, I kind of felt bad that like he lost his job because of me. So I kind of brought him along for that reason. But like that's the thing about GTA; it actually makes you care about these characters.
Right. I
Um,
thought about I thought about bringing him on, but then I saw the stats. But then when I was reading up on it later, you actually get, I think, the most time if you pick that hacker. You actually get
okay.
more time than you do by picking Paige, who has the higher skill, just because of the nature, I think, of that dynamic, like you were talking about, where you're calling him like he asked you to, um, and things like that. So I think you either get the same amount of time or maybe even a little bit more, but he takes away a lower cut, right? Um, so yeah, that was probably the one that I felt the most like, oh, I should have gone with the guy that I just connected with. But oh well. Yeah.
Also, I don't know. I wanted to bring up too. In the prior mission called "Casing the Jewel Store," where basically you go and like take pictures of everything.
Right,
Uh,
right.
before that, they actually make a reference to Grand Theft Auto 4. He actually
Hmm.
says, "Hey, Lester says that there's this Eastern European guy making moves in Liberty City, and
Oh,
that's the
huh.
main character of Grand Theft Auto 4." Like,
Oh,
I
okay.
freaking love that. I
I
was
wasn't
like,
sure. I wasn't sure what that was referring to. I thought, yeah, I thought maybe it was like another character that we either had met or will meet or something. But that's cool that
no,
it's
GTA
GTA
4.
4.
Like, I was so close. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna have to go back and replay GTA 4 now because this
Yeah,
came up.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, so that's the time that I spent with GTA 5 this last week. Again, really enjoying the combat is a lot of fun. Like the shootouts are a lot of fun. I do feel like there's still like some of the cars, they're so not hit and miss, but like the way they maneuver is so different.
Yeah,
And the way
yeah,
they
yeah. Like,
drive.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think they try like maybe a little too hard to like differentiate. Like, yeah, you're in a minivan or a pickup truck or whatever. You're gonna really pay for it on the handling side.
Yeah.
And what about the side missions? You do any fun side missions that stick out?
Uh, I did a Strangers and Freaks. I went for a run with Michael, and I don't even remember her name, but she's like the fitness freak, that you go running with to build your stamina. Um,
Her name's
and
Amanda.
Amanda, that's it. Yeah. So I went running with Amanda, and nearly died, nearly had a heart attack. Like I did sacrifice some of my health near the end just to beat her in the race, because I was out of stamina, but then I just kind of like pushed through. Um, but
You
yeah,
can kind of
so
cheat.
anyway,
You can kind of cheat a little bit, and she gets pissed if you do that. And I totally
yeah,
did it.
yeah, yeah, 100%. But yeah, so it's been a good time. Moving on now, I think I'm going to be meeting Trevor soon. I think right after this, I'll be having the third character kind of come into the mix, and so that should be a fun time. But I'm really enjoying my time in GTA 5 in Los Santos. So um, onward and upward. Okay. With that behind me, another game that I spent some time with this last week, and I'll kind of do a quick review on, is Granblue Fantasy Relink. I'll have a full review up on the site probably in the coming week. But I've been having a ton of fun with this game. It's it's extremely similar to Monster Hunter. The core narrative is pretty quick. Like I'm probably going to end up beating the story in like 15 to 18 hours. Um, and so the main narrative is pretty short, but there is a wealth of customization and leveling to be done outside of that. You have you have missions to take on, like survival, like fighting off hordes of enemies. You have a wealth of weapons that you can level up and improve that also impact your stats. You can learn a bunch of new skills. Everybody has like two pretty large trees of skills to learn from using what are called mastery points. And eventually it gets to like unlocking one node for one character costs like 270 or 300 or 400 mastery points. So you definitely have quite a bit of grinding that you can do to get everybody up to the highest level and fill out their ability trees. Overall, I'd say an 8 out of 10 is where I'm kind of landing with this game, just because the combat can feel a little stale and repetitive at times. You can change which character you're using, but at the end of the day, it's still very much like attack with square, like hard, more fierce attack with triangle, and then various skills that you can assign to like a shoulder plus main button combo. It's just not quite as intriguing of combat to me as even say like Tales of Arise or something. Um, so yeah, that's the main thing that detracts from it for me, and that the narrative is a bit thin. But honestly, right now with just how I'm playing video games and trying to complete games and get games under my belt, I appreciate that actually that it's a bit short because I'll be able to fit it into my calendar as I had planned. But yeah, it's been a fun time, and I would recommend it to anybody out there who enjoys that sort of thing. So um yeah, I don't know. Alan, have you played any of the? Well, I guess there haven't been a ton of Granblue games at before, but like, does this strike your interest at all? Like, have you seen any like trailers
Honestly,
or
the art
gameplay?
style looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The gameplay is less interesting to me. For sure, like probably when it goes on sale on Black Friday, I'll pick it up.
Sure.
Depending on the price, I would probably want to pick this up around the $20 range or less, and then give it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Um, All right. So let's move on to our stories for Monday, February 19th. Well, actually, it's Tuesday, February 20th, now that you're listening to it. We have 5 stories, starting with Helldivers 2 servers capped at 450,000 players. This is from IGN's Adam Bankhurst. Helldivers 2 developer Arrowhead Game Studios has temporarily capped concurrent players to 450,000 to help with server stability as it works to get the ceiling raised and fix other issues related to its immensely successful launch. Arrowhead took the Helldivers to Discord to share the news, saying it's working around the clock to solve the problems that players are running into. Um, it says, quote, "Hello divers. Earlier tonight, we had server related issues with a concurrent player spike. This led to some mission payouts failing, with some players being kicked to their ships or being logged out. Our team is working around the clock to solve these issues. While we've been working to mitigate some of our issues, we are still struggling to keep up with the scaling that is needed to accommodate all of our Helldivers. Therefore, we've had to cap our concurrent players to around 450,000 to further improve server stability. We will continue to work with our partners to get the ceiling raised." In a similar article from Tom Phillips over at Eurogamer, Helldivers 2 continues to dominate Steam, beats GTA 5 and Destiny 2 all-time player peaks. Uh, PlayStation published Helldivers 2 had a hugely successful weekend on Steam, despite some continuing server issues, with a fresh player peak of 409,367 users. That's a new record for Helldivers 2 and puts the game's all-time player peak higher than Steam stalwarts such as GTA 5, Rust, and Destiny 2. This game, it's crazy. The success of this game has really been interesting to see. I know we discussed it a little bit last week, Alan. You were saying how this felt like it was supposed to be like a swimming in sevens type game,
Oh yeah, big
kind
time.
of like mid-level. Maybe people would jump in and have some fun, but like this sort of reception, like I don't know what's your post-mortem on what's helped this game really take off.
People like fun games. Who knew, Jeremy? It
I
seems like
know.
people just absolutely love the loop that that game uses to kind of keep players engaged. Like it doesn't matter. Like you kind of at face value, it just looks like, oh, you're just mindlessly shooting at bugs. But the fact that you have friendly fire on all the time, the fact that it just gets
Mm,
so chaotic that you've got people killing each other, like their own friends, their own squad mates, but like they don't get mad about it because it happens in such a hilarious way. Like you're just surrounded by like 50,000 bugs, and someone just drops a bomb, and you're just like, hell yeah, dude, get him for me, do it for democracy,
yeah,
type of deal.
exactly.
And like, and obviously, streaming is a big impact. Same with Power World. It kind of, people jumped in going like, I don't know what to expect, and the next thing they know, they're having a blast, and thousands of other people can see them having fun and they kind of want to join in, and then it becomes like a snowball effect. But first and foremost, people are having a lot of fun playing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think people are having a ton of fun playing it, and then also the word of mouth marketing for this game is like an organic beast that I haven't really seen since like Among Us, maybe. But like, it's it's really interesting. Like I'm seeing like these TikToks of like girlfriends who are posting on like, here's how you can support your soldier in the war against, in the war for managed democracy and things like that, where like familiarizing them with like the phrases and the terms and just like kind of getting it around. And um it's crazy how every other hour when I'm refreshing Twitter, I'll see somebody posting a picture of them downloading Helldivers 2 either on Steam or on PlayStation and being like, all right, you won, I'm in, like I'm coming to fight bugs, and everybody underneath is like, yes, let's do it for liberty, like all this other stuff. And it's just like you said, it's a really fun gameplay loop. It's a really cool, just core not narrative necessarily, but just like it's just fun. Like you just get together with some friends, you kill some bugs, you go to war against the automatons, and it's serving to bridge also some of these console tensions that we've seen over the last few months as well. There's been a lot of interesting and kind of fun discourse around PlayStation players who are wanting this actually to get ported to Xbox so that they can have more players
Phil
to
Spencer was
help.
like, "Yo, bring Helldivers 2 to here. Like, we'll both benefit. Like, we'll
Yeah.
both make money, and the game will get a chance to grow even more."
Yeah, exactly. And which we can talk more about that in a little bit later in the show as to why that's kind of funny. But yeah, so I mean, just seeing those videos, seeing people like, yeah, like let's get more players in here, let's make this community bigger, and it's not PvP, right? It's a PvE experience, which is even cooler because I've never really been much for like that competitive shooter mentality. I always prefer like working alongside people, and so I think that's also helping out a lot as well. Like there's this sort of general understanding of best practices, how to support your squad mates, people who, go out in a blaze of glory, like you said, like these very cinematic TikToks and Twitter videos and captures of people who are like, I'm surrounded, I know I'm going down, but before I go, I'm throwing this 500-kilogram bomb and I'm taking with me. And like this guy just salutes as this huge bomb goes off and takes him out. And
But
so, yeah,
also, this is such a love letter to Starship Troopers, and that
yeah,
movie is dumb, campy, fun. But this kind of copies that, but like turns the campy down just enough to let a more mainstream audience enjoy it. Like the
yeah,
Starship Troopers is pretty much a cult classic, a cult hit, but it
yeah,
never quite went beyond that. And I think that the genius in this one is in just getting just enough of those elements to make it kind of goofy and funny without doing it too much.
exactly, exactly. So, um, yeah, it's great to see Helldivers 2 getting this reception, this fun that people are having. I haven't jumped into another quick play, in the last week. I did jump into a couple of games and had a great time. Again, I think the pick up and go nature of it is also a big part of its success. But
And having it launch on both PC and PlayStation day and date, it didn't have to wait a year to get there. I think is a massive part of the fact that someone could see and go, "Oh, I can get it on PC. Like I don't need to have a PS5 and play PlayStation Plus to play online. I can just take it on Steam $40 and just go."
yeah, and the price point, right? We discussed this last week as
Absolutely.
well. $40, and some people had PlayStation stars that they were able to use to reduce the price even more, or whatever. So it's just it's pretty crazy. Seeing the success of it, but I'm hoping that people, folks are taking notes, taking lessons on this. Sony is reflecting on this and seeing how potentially, how their live service strategy can succeed. Because I think, and this will be my last point on this before we go to the next story, but like a big part of the live service discourse and some of the concerns around it is that this idea that quality games are going to be sacrificed in pursuit of the almighty dollar, right? Like that in lieu of say a really great indie title or a really great, second party or first party, and not second party, but like a double A game, in lieu of getting those double A games, that Sony will instead try to push all their money in the middle of the table on live service, and so we're just going to get a Fortnite clone or something where that doesn't necessarily have that same level of like IP power or buy-in from players to spend time in it. But I think seeing Helldivers 2 and seeing the success that it has and how fun it is and how cool the world is, like gives me hope that perhaps investing in a live service strategy isn't the worst thing if those live service games look and feel like this, like if
No,
it
like you could tell
doesn't.
there's like a
Yeah,
conviction by this developer. This is what they wanted to make
right,
versus Naughty Dog, which was like, hey, make a live service Last of Us, which is probably not what they wanted to do. So
yeah,
I think that's a big part of it as well. And one last question before we move on. Do
yeah.
you think by the end of 2024 we're still talking about Helldivers 2? Is it still like, are
Oh,
people
100%.
still wanting to spread democracy quite as hard?
Yeah, 100%. I think especially in the next 10 months, so many things could change. I mean, I think the biggest X factor will be what the map looks like, right? Like what the roadmap looks like for additional content and expansion and things like that. We're already seeing some tips of what that could look like, because when you go to your map to pick the planet and the mission that you want to take, that's a big, there's a lot of empty sections in there that can be filled in by new aliens coming in, new forces, new factions, etc. um, but there is a lot of runway that can make sure that we're still talking about this game at the end of the year. And if Xbox somehow gets into the mix, like if Sony people and Xbox people are getting into a room right now talking about it and figuring out a rollout strategy by like holiday or something, forget about it. Like this game's going to go into the stratosphere. So, yeah, I'm confident that we'll be talking about it through the end of the year. So, but
Okay.
we'll take note of that, right? Like when we come back around the end of the year, like our end
Yeah.
of year episode, we'll be like, okay, here's some games we thought that we were still going to be talking about. Are they still relevant, right? Like let's go look at the concurrent counts and stuff, and we'll see. I I will say that by the end of the year, that Helldivers 2 will still be maintaining 250,000 concurrent players.
Okay, we have another story coming up as well that might tie into this. So,
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. Um, so next story, Nintendo Switch 2 coming in 2025 question mark. So this is Video Game Chronicles or VGC.com's Andy Robinson. It says sources say Nintendo Switch 2 will now launch in 2025. Um, so Nintendo's Next console could launch later than expected in early 2025, it's claimed. That's according to Brazilian journalist Pedro Henrique Lute Lipe, who claims in a new video that he received the information from 5 separate sources. According to the sources, they are also working on games targeting Q1 2025 to launch alongside the console itself, which is internally slipped out of a previous 2024 target. Eurogamer reports it's heard similar whispers from industry sources this week, though they have not been able to concretely substantiate them. Um, and then previously, VGC reported that Nintendo was targeting a launch for its next console in late 2024 per development sources, and then this was later supported by other outlets. So, yeah, there have been additional updates from other outlets as well, including Eurogamer and Bloomberg, that says that Nintendo is advising game publishers that its next generation console will be delayed until the early months of 2025. It's told some publishing executives not to expect the console until March 2025 at the earliest. Um, so
can we pause here so I can
yeah,
take a moment to
yeah.
bask in glory?
All right.
If I
They
remember
wish
correctly,
you
I've been
best.
saying this since last year,
Oh,
2023. Listeners, you heard it here first on the GG Dispatch.
yeah.
2025 is when the Switch is coming, not 2024. It feels so good. Kind of funny. Call us up to the big leagues.
Okay, sure. I think that this wasn't planned. I think that 2024 was the plan. I think that there are some. I would love to know. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. And I said last week, right? Like the biggest question mark and variable for me on a 2024 launch is the lineup, right? The software lineup. What would you have ready in time for a fall release of a Switch 2? And from the sounds of it, Nintendo wouldn't have much, right? Which is why they are having to push it back. Um, I still think it's a mistake. I still think that it's ultimately going to hurt Nintendo to have, and maybe right now they're doing damage control with trying to like find some titles and stuff to fill the void. But I mean, the console is it's time. The console is old. It's run out its life cycle, um, and it's time for a new console. Sooner rather than later would be better. Um, but if 2025 is where it's going to be, then so be it. But yes,
I think that
enjoy your moment in the sunshine because yeah, you got it.
like I still feel like this is going to be the year of magical ports of
Mhm.
remasters that get the flowers they deserve, just like Metroid Prime last year. Just have this whole year be that. Wind Waker HD, give it to us. I feel
Yeah,
like that game gets so much crap, but the only reason it got that much crap was because people were expecting something very different. I think that put it out now and you get the flowers that it deserves, along with
yeah.
several other games that are still kind of like Wii U that never kind of haven't made their way yet.
I'm curious if Metroid Prime 4, and this was a conversation they were having on Kind of Funny as well, and I it got me thinking about it too. Like, do we think that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be the swan song for the Switch or the kickoff for the Switch 2? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Kickoff, like remember, it was I can't remember how many years ago. Basically, like they scrapped that whole thing and then went to those fellas in Austin are like, "Yo, can you fix this? Can you save this?"
Right.
And they just restarted from scratch, and we see how long it can take to develop a game. Now, I think that was probably always meant to be like a launch title for the Switch 2 in a
Yeah.
way for them to really push the tech. Because like I remember as a kid, like popping in the original Metroid Prime into a GameCube and like being like obviously I was a little kid, but like still it blew me away seeing like the water effects on the HUD and everything. Like
Right.
it was a real technical powerhouse in
Yeah.
those days.
Oh, I
So
love
I
the
think
Metroid
that
Prime games. They were
this could
amazing. Yeah.
this could be the same for the Switch too. Like something that shows like, yo, this is a legit little handheld, I guess, not a box really, but a handheld. And you're gonna get some real cool stuff coming out of this.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, if you release Metroid Prime 4 near the known end of the Switch's life, like that's going to that could stifle sales. I mean, it, again, it's a question of like, would people rush out to buy it to play it on their Switch, or would they all hold off on buying it because they are planning on getting a Switch 2 anyways? And I think it's
I
more
think
of the
that
latter.
audience would
Yeah.
wait. That
Yeah.
specific audience would wait. This isn't a Mario or like a Zelda.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, enjoy your win, enjoy your bouquet. Again, it's still, until we hear it from Nintendo directly, right? It's not set in stone, but the more that we're hearing, the sources that we're hearing it from, it definitely seems like it's going to be that 2025 is more of the target there. And so we'll see what happens. I still think that that's quite a bit of time. It makes me interested and curious to see what they're going to announce in the Nintendo Partner Direct, for example, which is our next story. The Nintendo Partner Direct showcase is going to be. It was announced for this week with 25 minutes of games coming to the Switch. It's set to take place on the 21st at 6 a.m. Pacific time and feature about 25 minutes of info focused on the Nintendo Switch games coming in the first half of 2024 from our publishing and development partners. So there are, we talked about, they've already shown off some Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Princess Peach Showtime and things like that. And so, I'm curious to know what else they announce with this and maybe helping to fill some of those months now that we're going to be waiting for the for the Switch too. But is there anything else that you would expect from this showcase, Alan, or that you're maybe hoping for, wishing for, that they'll announce to fill some of those gaps in?
Like I said, give us those magical ports, baby. Make this whole year about beautiful magical ports that run 60 FPS on a Nintendo Switch because there'll be older games that you can do that.
Sure.
And I think everyone would be happy for it. Like also make them like $40. Like, and I think you'd have a winning combo. Like kind of you can sort of deflect some of the angst like from people like yourself who are like, "Where's my Switch 2?" It's like, well, here are these awesome ports. So you can go back and play these classics, and they're updated and they look great, and they're $40.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what they announce. Again, I'm an RPG fan, so anything if Team Asano comes out and announces something, you know what I was thinking, in the realm of a swan song, right? Like a Switch swan song
Yeah.
and a remake, Chrono Trigger, do it,
Oh,
get it
nice.
done. Like if they are able to get like the Chrono Trigger remaster done by fall, by holiday, they will sell that game to uh, most of the 140 million
So,
Switches that
so
are
when
out there.
when you
Yeah,
say like, are you referring to like just like a kind of like the Final Fantasy pixel type of
remaster. Yeah, kind. I mean,
remaster?
I, I don't know the extent. Again, maybe folks are are really good at keeping things under wraps. Maybe there's been more progress made on that sort of project than we have been exposed to. But or maybe not. Like maybe it could be as simple as here's like your official refresh remaster on the Switch for Chrono Trigger, one of those games to put out, or it could be something a bit more robust, kind of in the same vein as like an Octopath Traveler type game or something like that. Um,
Okay.
I
Now,
don't know, but like if they were able to get something like that out, I think that could be a title that wouldn't worry about cannibalizing Switch 2 sales because you
yeah, yeah.
it's going to look the same. It's going to look great anyways. And then you're going to move a lot of units because it's a very beloved IP. So
If it's like one of those pixel type, like the Square Enix has done with the Final Fantasy games,
yeah.
make it a dual pack. Do that and then toss in the Chrono Cross Radical Dream or whatever, and make it one package for physical
Mm-hmm.
first time in the US.
Yeah, maybe. So we'll see. Uh, Story number 4, Sony will not release any new major existing PlayStation franchise titles before April 2025. This is from Wesleyan Poole at IGN. Sony has said it will not release any major existing PlayStation franchise games before April 2025. In a financial call, Sony Interactive Entertainment boss Hiroki Totoki ruled out big new games in the God of War and Spider-Man series during the company's next fiscal year, which ends March 31st, 2025. Totoki said, regarding first-party software, we aim to continue to focus on producing high-quality works and developing live service games. But while major projects are currently under development, we do not plan to release any new major existing franchise titles next fiscal year, like God of War Ragnarok and Marvel's Spider-Man 2. It also appears to rule out everything from a Ghost of Tsushima sequel to a Horizon sequel before April 2025, which leaves a big first party game gap in the PlayStation 5 slate. However, Sony will, of course, release new first party games for the console from new franchises such as Haven Studios' Fair Games, Fairwalk Studios' Concord, as well as non major quote unquote franchises. Um, and then that also, meanwhile, Sony is pushing hard on so-called second-party games to help flesh out the upcoming exclusive games list, including the hotly anticipated Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as well as the eye-catching action game Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin. So I have enough backlog to keep me busy until like 2030, so I'm cool with this. But
I think everybody does.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, Alan. Do you see this as like a yellow flag or a red flag or a cry for help at all, or do you think that
No,
this
no.
timeline
Like
makes
the
sense?
type of the timeline makes sense. The way in which you're putting out smash hits year after year was like insane. And we know how long it takes to make those kinds of games, how much money it is. So I think it's completely normal for them to be having sort of I guess like a down year. But lucky for them, they got Helldivers 2. They've got, a fun game that people are really enjoying. I think so long as that and other third party games like, Rebirth, Stellar Blade, was it the Ronin game?
Yeah, Rise of the Ronin. Yeah,
Yeah, Rise of the Ronin are coming out, and you got games to play. I think there's not really much to complain about. Now, if you head out to like August of 2025, and there's still like no first party, like sort of big game that you would
they
expect from
can't
Sony,
go through summer without anything.
that would be crazy. But
No way.
also like I wouldn't be surprised if they got like a couple of maybe other double A type like Helldivers 2 type titles that they haven't shown yet.
Uh-huh.
Because they did buy up quite a few smaller studios as Xbox was buying up, Activision, Blizzard, King, and all this other stuff. So I think they could easily come out and like use this time to say, okay, let's give these double A's time to shine.
Yeah, yeah. I Yeah, for sure. I think that April makes sense. And, again, after COVID and everything, 2023 was a really packed year just because development was literally like essentially backlogged, and then everything kind of all came out in a huge wave of amazing games. And now the studios are all like, okay, let's all take a breather, right? Like, we put out a lot of really big titles, and now we all need to kind of calibrate, align, and do what we need to do. So it makes sense. I think beyond a much further beyond April 2025, it's like I would expect that Sony will have something in the chamber. So that's when I would start to get a bit more worried. But as of now, like 14 months, right, between now and potentially another Sony first party game, plenty to do. Plenty to do, plenty to look at, plenty to, dig into. So I'm not terribly concerned.
If I'm Xbox, I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, I hear you could use some Starfield on this bad boy.
That's right. Yeah. I hear you have a bit of about a year long gap that you're looking to fill. Maybe get some Starfield in there. Um I just because before we move on to our last story, um, you know, they mentioned Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I was just thinking, so the first one came out in 2020. It's been 4 years, and this one's came out. So the next one's going to come out in 2028. Presumably, the last one will come out in like 2028, 2029. Um, and that mean it will have taken the better part of including development on the front end for remake, like 15 years to develop Final Fantasy VII's whole remake trilogy, right? um and I think recently they were talking about how if they were going to do Final Fantasy VI in a similar vein, it would take 20 years to make. And people were like, that's crazy, that's insane. But now I think about that, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see that. Like when you
Just
think
give
about
us
that
the
timeline.
2D HD, my guys. Just give us the 2D
I
HD.
know, I know, I know. But I'm just like, man, they've been developing this Final Fantasy VII, remake trilogy for quite some time, and oh, I can't wait. It's coming. It's only 10 days away, Alan. I can't wait.
I know, I know. This is kind of like sort of slightly off topic. This is where I hope that where AI does do some good in like helping artists and kind of like get prototypes and helping them get these games up and going sooner, like getting their ideas into being an actual thing,
Yeah, yeah,
rather than like wholesale replacing them. I think that'll be like magic when we can get these games in a much quicker cadence because the employees are being laid off; they're being helped by the AI.
yeah, for sure. All right, last story. Xbox business update. This is from Kat Bailey at IGN. Xbox revealed its vision for the future on February 15th in a podcast featuring executives Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty, who did their best to articulate the path forward for the platform amid reports of plans to embrace a third party publishing strategy. The business update confirmed that 4 games will be releasing on other platforms, though Xbox did not provide additional details. It also revealed Xbox's plans for Activision Blizzard games on Game Pass while teasing the largest technical leap you will have ever seen in a hardware generation for its next console. Um, the biggest news was Xbox's confirmation that 4 games will indeed be going multi-platform. Spencer declined to name the games, saying only the teams that are building those games have announced plans that are not too far away. As we know, game teams put a lot of energy into their announcements and partners, so I don't want to take away anything from those teams. So I won't be I won't be talking about the title specifically, but I think when they come out, it'll make sense. Um, and then asked whether Indiana Jones and Starfield will be among the games going multi-platform. He said they are not. Uh, and then as far as the one that will be going multi-platform, again, while they didn't confirm them, Verge reports that it'll be Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, and Grounded.
Yeah, this
Diablo,
thing had me bored to tears 5 minutes in. Like
yeah,
it was so weird. It could have been a blog post. It could have been an email. It could have been
yeah,
anything. Like it's clearly Tina Mini is part of like Xbox. She was there, kind of asking them questions, a sort of interview style. But like the questions are so designed to let them just say what they want to say. That it's just
yeah,
super weird to get that. I felt that a lot of the interviews that they did with like The Verge and other places were far more interesting, and it could have
mm,
just been that. And then again, more weirdness of like, there's 4 games, but we're not going to tell you what they are, which just led to more speculation. Again, we see Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, and Grounded, but again, that's kind of the an educated guess. We still don't really know what's going to happen. So weird times all around. It felt just sort of like we hit the rewind button 3 weeks ago before all the crazy leaks, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we had said like, oh, we'll do an episode on it, but really like nobody like we were like, ah, this is kind of boring. Like there's nothing really earth shattering here. And that's kind of honestly, it's kind of a bummer because Xbox, for all the fervor and craziness around the discourse, they had the attention, the undivided attention of the
Yep.
entire gaming community on the 15th. Like everybody knew something was coming, and that could have been a really great opportunity to set that like bold vision for the future of Xbox, or like make those announcements and get the buy-in, and like maybe even move up announcements that you weren't planning on doing before. Like you know you're going to have everybody's eyes on you, right? Like make it a banger, like help to assuage the concerns instead of, kind of talking in circles. Like Spencer's kind of gone back and forth on this whole like console exclusivity thing, because then we learned like every screen's an Xbox, and then like he said like never say never when it comes to console exclusivity. And again, like he's telling Sony like, hey, bring Helldivers over to Xbox. Like I don't know who wins out by having it just be on PlayStation, but then also saying like, yeah, no, we're going to keep things exclusive, like Indiana Jones, etc.
But he also
So
said like in 5 years, like exclusives will be a far less important part of like the industry as a whole, rather versus like for Xbox.
right. So um just really, really, I don't even want to say interesting, just kind of odd odd
Yeah,
update
very
there.
weird.
But hopefully it
Xbox
works
gonna
out.
Xbox.
Xbox gonna Xbox. In the meantime, Game Pass, Persona 3 Reloads on there. I haven't had a chance to dig into it. It's like 100 plus hours of
Yeah, me neither, dude. Me
gaming that I
neither.
just don't have right now. I don't have time to go into Tartarus. I'm sorry. But I want
Yeah, I've
to.
got GTA 4 to go replay. Hang on.
Yeah, exactly. So but that is it. Those are all of our stories for today. Nothing in the deals corner to speak
Sadly,
of.
no deals, no deals.
No deals to be seen. So uh, until next time, I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
Keep gaming, everyone.
See ya.